All right, let's continue to get you more reaction to President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address. The Agricultural Business Chamber says it's happy with the changed attitude towards energy generation, especially renewables. Now, the Chamber's CEO, John Purchase, joins us now from our studios in Pretoria. John, thanks very much for your time. So, among some of the things that have been applauded, it's inclusive economic growth to address some of the country's key challenges, this issue around the changed attitude towards energy generation. What are some of the other positives that came out of it for you?
Yes, I think the whole focus on inclusive growth, and the President emphasized that, is obviously good news for agribusiness. The approach to around social compacts and master plans, because we're already busy developing the master plan for agriculture and agri-processing, a process that I happen to lead from business side. But obviously the social compacts between business, government and labour are very important to address the issue so that we could get good balance in these approaches. Obviously, and we've already seen the poultry master plan being developed and pretty well received by industry. I think you mentioned it, but the whole issue around electricity and security of supply of electricity is incredibly important to the agro-processing sector and to the agricultural sector. And the greater freedom that we have now to generate our own electricity, so-called embedded generation, is strongly welcomed. We've just got to see this now translating into action, that the necessary regulations are promulgated, etc., so that we can continue with that process. Also, the other positives were also around logistics, and especially the overhaul of the Durban port, where our fruit exports and also imports, exports of maize and wheat, etc., are critical, and where the port is not efficient, and we need to get that efficient. So there are a number of major positives in the whole process.
Yeah, major positives, but also perhaps the gap comes in where we don't see perhaps firm regulations and firm deadlines at this stage.
Sure, but I think in the State of the Nation address it gives you an overarching picture. So we would like to see far more detail in the budget speech, which is coming up in 2 weeks' time. And then obviously we will engage and also with the Presidency's office, what they call the Project Management Office in the Presidency, and with the various ministers to hold them to account on these issues. There are also one or two negatives, and the situation around expropriation without compensation or expropriation with no compensation is a very negative policy statement in terms of policy certainty and the protection and security of property rights. That's very unfortunate that government still wants to continue with that, and it has a negative effect on investment. Not so sure about the whole state bank that they want to invest or establish when we're already battling with our own other SOEs. They must first fix those SOEs that are critically important to the economy, get rid of those SOEs that don't perform a proper economic enabling function. So there are still some gaps also in policy and overarching policy from the President and the governing party that we don't agree with.
So you're not soothed by the fact that the President said that there would be compulsory training for beneficiaries when it comes to expropriation of land. These 700,000 hectares of state land that will be released this year for agricultural production, it doesn't comfort you that the President says there will be compulsory training for the people who will eventually be the beneficiaries?
Look, there are a couple of more positive things coming out with the new Minister Didiza, with land reform and rural development. The one is the new bill that was also mentioned around the selection of beneficiaries. Now, we've looked at that. There's some positives in that, but there's still quite a lot of work to be done on that bill, because it really was people that were profiting from land that was acquired through the so-called plus proactive land acquisition strategy that had no interest in farming, but they were getting farms, and this was totally unacceptable. So there are some positives around that. We also, where it encompasses state land that's expropriated without compensation, that would also make sense. Obviously, the whole expropriation without compensation issue is tied very strongly to the expropriation bill or amendment bill that's currently at NEDLAC, and we're dealing with that at the moment. And those definitions under which conditions it will take place are very important, and that's quite tough, and we must make sure that there are no loopholes in that process, because that can create major uncertainty.
And of course, you know, we always talk about the President's State of the Nation address being the skeleton, and we get all of the meat on the bones when the Finance Minister takes to the podium. What's the kind of clarity that you're hoping to get from Tito Mboweni?
Well, we say that we hear a lot of things in SONA, but when you see governments budgeting for certain issues, then you know exactly what's going to happen and not going to happen. So the budget does give us a lot more detail on where the focus areas of government are and what they're going to do in terms of priorities, etc. I must just say that generally overall, from an economic point of view, there are a number of positives in the SONA. Exactly how that's now going to translate into the positives in stimulating the economy, very important, because the President did say that Minister Tito Mboweni's paper that he put out around the economic reforms that we need in South Africa is fully supported. I would hope that Minister Mboweni is now going to put meat to the bone, if I can call it that way, and expand on exactly how he's going to get the economy going again.
Yeah, absolutely. And economic growth translates into jobs, and of course we know what our jobs numbers look like. Thanks very much for your time. John Purchase is the CEO in the Agriculture Business Chamber, joining us there via Pretoria.